Ladies and gentlemen, kicking off the first stop on his world tour, our new president and prophet, Russell M. Nelson! You say you want some revelation, well, here you go. It's gonna blow your freaking mind.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the weekly Mormon News Roundup. I am your humble host, Steve Ace, which is talent on loan from Kolob. And with half the Kinderhook plates tied behind my back, we're going to ruminate on the great and spacious beehive today. It's October 22nd, 2023. Thanks so much for joining us to discuss the latest current events in Mormondom. We got a big episode. This is episode 82. We got Judson from Latter-day Digest, who's co-hosting. We've got Cordon, President Bonnie Cordon, going to Southern Virginia University. We're going to give you the scoop on that one. And Sister Kathleen Eyring has passed away. If you want to get in touch with the Mormon News Roundup, you can come on over to our website, or you can drop me an email to kolob@mormonnewsroundup.org. I'd like to welcome onto our program our fabulous co-host here, Judson. Gene, how's it going?
Thank you, DVs, for having me. It's exciting to be streaming with you.
Absolutely. Now, Gene, what is your 1 minute Mormon story?
So actually, I think I might have patented the 1 minute Mormon story. I was always kind of a little bit of a rebel, like in the church meetings. Sometimes people would quote Jesus, and I would say, well, he didn't really say that. He spoke Aramaic. I was kind of like a back row Mormon, 10 minutes late, so 5 minutes past Mormon Standard Time. And I didn't go to BYU. I didn't serve a mission because I thought you had to be perfect, and I was far from perfect. And now I'm pretty sure I could serve a mission because I've seen a lot of missionaries in my day. But I was able to figure out how to answer the temple questions good enough to get married in the temple in 1983. I got as high, maybe as in the church, as ward executive secretary. And then I kind of progressed down from there to like elders quorum presidency, and then scout leader, and then nursery leader, and then janitor. And the writing was on the wall. I was kind of on my way out. My first sort of disagreement with the leaders was that I thought, after learning actually about blacks in the priesthood issues and studying the matter, I thought that women were probably going to be ordained someday. And I wanted to join the ordained women movement. But my wife said that if I ever mentioned that at church, that she would never sit next to me. So instead of sort of vocally supporting the ordained women movement, I quietly sat next to my wife in church. Later on, when there were lots of excommunications in 2014 and 2015, I sort of stopped paying tithing, and then I stopped attending. And then during COVID, I was able to pick up a lot of the Mormon history that I had missed out on all my life, and decided that things weren't exactly as taught to me. And so I still consider myself Mormon, wearing More Than One Way to Mormon shirt. And I've attended last year my first Mormon History Association and first Sunstone. I discovered that I was fourth cousin 4 times removed from Joseph Smith. And so I'm pretty Mormon, I figure.
Yeah, without a doubt. And you also started a podcast recently here, Gene. It's called the Latter-day Digest. And what is the Latter-day Digest? What do you guys do over there with this podcast, which is right now, I believe it is currently on YouTube. Is that correct?
That's right. Latter Daily Digest is on YouTube.
Oh.
Maven Brody is my co-host. She was gracious to mention it on your program about a month ago, that we were going to get things going. Maven has had a lot of technical difficulties. I have about 3 videos that are up where I interview people, and Maven and I have interviewed 3 people together, but for some reason we haven't been able to edit or get things straight to put those up, but they're coming this week, I believe.
Yeah, and what is the Latter-day Digest all about? What is it that you're covering on your podcast? Why would anybody want to tune into it?
So I came across a lot of podcasts that were pretty good. After watching 4,000 hours of Mormon stories, I thought I would venture to some other, podcasts a little bit. And I realized that there's a lot of podcasts out there where people have a good message. People have something that might be interesting to somebody else. And so I thought I would do a podcast to honor other podcasters. And so it's basically just about promoting people that have put themselves out, put their faces or their voices out there. They have ideas, they're thinking, and they're presenting their ideas. And I thought we should honor them. So that's the main focus. We'll be doing other interviews here and there as well.
Well, we'll be looking very carefully at the Latter Daily Digest. I want to make sure I say that correctly because we expect big things to happen from you and Maven Brody. And I just wanted to say, before I invited you onto the Mormon News Roundup before you started your podcast. So perhaps D-Bays, he really can see around corners and make you smarter. What do you think, Gene?
I think you can definitely see around corners in the dark shade of night.
Wow, that is a resounding endorsement. Yes, but I guess I really did see, because most people that I invite on have some type of public persona, and I guess it was the fact that you saw the Mormon News Roundup and you thought, even I can do better than this. So you started Latter Daily Digest. So it should be really good. I watched I watched one of your episodes there with Gustavo, and looking for really good things. That does bring us to our joke of the week, Gene, and I believe that you have that for us, right?
I do. Did you hear about the Mormon cat with a speech impediment?
No.
He had 9 wives.
Okay, there's always polygamy with these jokes. It seems like you can never get away from the polygamy with these jokes. Now,
Mormonism is all about polygamy, even still.
That's true. And if you want to find out more about the Mormon News Roundup, then we drop all of our episodes onto Apple. We drop them onto Spotify. You can find us in those too. Now, let's jump into some of the news here from the week here. And, big headline here that happened this week, Gene, is obviously we have the horrible crisis that is happening in the Middle East as we speak. We're on day about 12, I think, of the uprising between Gaza and Israel, between Palestine and Israel, after the horrendous violence that has taken place there. And it took 6 days here, Gene, for the church to issue a statement that went along with this conflict here. And the First Presidency of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints issued a statement just on Thursday. Gene, will you read us that statement?
We are devastated by the recent eruption of violence and loss of life in the Middle East. Violence of this nature is abhorrent to us, and it is not in harmony with the gospel of Jesus Christ, which is a gospel of peace. At such times, our hearts ache for all victims of this atrocity. As servants of God, we affirm that He calls upon us all to love our neighbors as ourselves, and we pray for a peaceful resolution of all conflicts.
Yeah, what's your reaction to the church's very brief statement here, Gene?
So I really think that it's good the church released a statement. I think I found out recently that can't remember if it's the Hudsmith family or another Mormon family said to, I don't know if it's Penn State or somewhere, that they were going to withdraw funding any of their things if they didn't do a statement. So I don't know if that's the motivation for the church's statement. But it's definitely a sad situation in the Middle East, and it's all due to religious extremism.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that the Tim Ballard denunciation statement that came out from the church, that came out lickety-split, fast as can be, but it took 6 days for the church to make a statement on this incredibly horrific conflict. Why do you suppose there's a difference in between the speed in which the church releases statements for a seemingly unimportant church member, Tim Ballard, but then it takes 6 days to get this very global conflict, a statement out? Why is there a difference between the speed here?
All I can think is that Tim Ballard had more connections to church leaders than Hamas.
Yeah, it's amazing what gets a statement out around here and what doesn't. Part of the church's article here from the Deseret News says that prophets have foreseen a day when there would be wars and rumors of wars and when the whole earth would be in commotion. That's the thing, though, is that prophets, they didn't see around this corner. They never seemed to foresee any specific conflict in advance in order to be able to do something to prevent it. including warning the people who are involved. So they're citing the biblical passages here that say there's going to be wars and rumors of wars, but we can never get specific. We can never identify one of these conflicts that's going to come in advance.
It seems like their ability to see into the future is actually a rearview mirror.
Yeah, and also along the statement, it says that violence of this nature is abhorrent to us and is not in harmony with the gospel of Jesus Christ. I did reflect on that this week, Gene, and I thought, wait a minute. Didn't God repeatedly command genocides in the Old Testament, literally in this area? And Jesus killed untold thousands in 3rd Nephi chapter 9, not to mention the global flood and our good friend Uzzah in the Bible. It seems like it says violence of this nature is abhorrent, but we've seen time and time again in the Book of Mormon, it is really filled with bloodshed and horror. That's why I'm wondering, why is there seemingly a difference in the message now?
Well, maybe there's a rebranding going on. Maybe the church might increase the logo size for Jesus Christ. They might introduce pictures of Jesus in the temple ceremony. Maybe there are some changes that are happening.
Yeah, that does make me wonder, and part of the statement also said, let us show that there's a peaceful, respectful way to resolve complex issues and an enlightened way to work out disagreements. That seems like a great sentiment. So what is the solution? It says, let us show that there's a peaceful solution. Okay, what is the peaceful solution? How is this supposed to end? What is God's solution for the so-called Palestinian problem? This has been going on now for 60 years, and the church has shown no leadership whatsoever in healing this horrible tragedy in the Middle East, except for releasing a 2-paragraph summary, which falls far short. What is the peaceful resolution, and why can't church leadership not only tell us what it is, but take leadership, be a leader, and heal the Middle East? Why do we never get anything out of it?
It seems like sometimes, God has to be the parent that lets their child stay in jail as a lesson instead of being proactive and helping.
Yeah, that's a sad sentiment for me, at least, to think about. The church has a presence in Israel, and in particular in the Jerusalem Center, which is basically a study abroad program for BYU students. And guess what? They didn't. The church said that on last Friday that they were going to be removing those students, relocating them to Greece. By the way, even though some of those flights really got gummed up, most of the Latter-day Saints have left Israel. How come we didn't get a notice in advance? It would have been nice to have notice in advance. This is why we have prophets, seers, and revelators who can foretell the future, see when conflicts are going to happen, and can warn people, tell people to repent, and get people out of the way. But that never seems to happen.
They're just not as good as a prophet as you are.
Well, I'm not much of a prophet at all. That is for sure.
We talked about you being able to see around corners. It doesn't even seem like they're able to see around down the street.
Yeah, definitely. And this is the thing with this statement. Well, whose side is God on here? Whose side who's in the right? Who's in the wrong? I guess we're never going to know. Prophets are supposed to see around corners and make you smarter, but they won't call the balls and the strikes. Remember, President Biden, he went on to 60 Minutes this week, and he gave his thoughts about how to lead the Middle East in peace. Why isn't Russell M. Nelson? Why is President Biden leading the way on this, on how to solve the world's issues, but not the Lord's prophet? This is the same thing. President Nelson, he didn't go to Ukraine when the war broke out, but President Biden did. President Nelson didn't go to Syria when there was an earthquake. President Nelson didn't go to Maui when there was a wildfire. President Nelson doesn't go to the Middle East, but President Biden does. Why is the world's leadership running through President Biden? If it's the Lord's prophet, this is the sole vicar of Jehovah. Why is all of these conflicts being solved by President Biden and not President Nelson?
I think if people just think about for themselves for a few minutes, they might come up with the answer all on their own.
And that's the funny thing. I don't know. It's funny is the wrong word. There's a lot in this statement that is really lacking. And I found this news article here that I want to play for you, Gene, about what was left out of the church's news statement regarding this conflict. Let me play this for you and get your reaction.
Now at 10, Utah Rabbi Avremi Zippel is reacting to a statement the First Presidency of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints shared today on the war in Israel. Rabbi Zippel saying, quote, "A statement devoid of the word terror misses the mark, in my opinion, especially from such a historically staunch ally of the Jewish people." This, of course, after the LDS Church put out a statement saying, quote, "We are devastated by the recent eruption of violence and loss of life in the Middle East. Violence of this nature is abhorrent to us and is not in harmony with the gospel of Jesus Christ, which is a gospel of peace."
All right, Gene. So this is what I'm wondering. The church's statement didn't mention the word terror at all. Well, so the statement needs to be politically correct because terror is a politically charged word. Are we not able to call terrorism for what it is? What's wrong with calling terrorism terrorism?
God is so careful in his choice of words that he doesn't want to offend anybody. People have to make a choice to be offended.
Yeah. President Nelson, once again, he's AWOL. He's absent from the world's the disasters that need prophetic leadership. He is once again AWOL. President Biden's there. The prophet is not there. The prophet is never anywhere. As the vicar of Jehovah, Russell M. Nelson, he's either impotent, he can't do anything about these conflicts, or he just doesn't care. Is there, am I missing something? Either he doesn't care or he's impotent. He can't do anything. Which one of those two is better?
It seems like there's a lot of hand wringing instead of lending a hand. And, there's at least 150 billion hands that the church can lend.
Yeah, I remember back with the COVID. You remember what Wendy Nelson said about COVID, how President Nelson foresaw COVID and cleared out his calendar because, I don't know if you remember that story, because he saw COVID but he knew that he wasn't going to be doing any engagements. So he cleared out his calendar. Nobody knew why. And then boom, COVID hit. And look, he's a prophet. That's interesting. President Nelson, he didn't see this one coming. We could have easily checked his prophetic abilities here. But again, he didn't let any of the Latter-day Saints or anyone know what was happening. And also reminds me here, Gene, President Nelson, his most famous address is his peacemaker address, which he gave in General Conference. Is this how a peacemaker acts? You release a 2-paragraph statement, and there you have it. Well, I'm a peacemaker. Is that how being a global peacemaker works?
Unfortunately, I heard somebody say that since he already received an award for peacemaking, he's all used up now.
Yeah, if you think about it, remember the President Nelson last year won the Gandhi, Mandela, Martin Luther King Peace Award from Morehouse College in Georgia, just outside of Atlanta. And just remember, Gandhi, he did things for peace. He did real things. He didn't release PR statements. He put his life on the line. He ended up being assassinated. And Mandela, he spent, 26 years in jail for his freedoms. And Martin Luther King, he also gave his life for peace. These folks, they put their lives literally on the line for peace. Those are real peacemakers who some of them paid the ultimate sacrifice to try to heal this troubled world. And these are things that President Russell Marion Nelson Sr. knows nothing about and should not be put in the same category whatsoever.
I agree. Although he has, spent a lot of time in Utah, which is kind of a sacrifice to a lot of people in the rest of the world.
What I'd expect from someone who's a global peacemaker is somebody who goes outside of their comfort level and can put their life on the line. President Biden, he went to Ukraine. That was very dangerous. President Biden went to an active war zone in Palestine and Israel. That's what peacemakers do. That's what people who are being dangerous and want to change the world for better do. They don't just release a 2-paragraph statement that says, our hearts are devastated. That is wholly insufficient. And by the way, Gene, is the church going to help the Palestinians who are suffering here? There's a huge amount of suffering that is taking place in the Gaza Strip right now. Is the church going to help out with that suffering? Your heart's ache. Okay, open your checkbook up. Are we going to see a donation here?
Let's see if we see some boots on the ground and people wearing Mormon helping hands in the Gaza Strip someday.
Yeah, I mean, our hearts ache, but I guess not enough to do anything meaningful. Okay, our hearts are aching, but I guess you're on your own. And we're not going to make any donations. We're not going to send any senior leaders. We're not going to use priesthood power. President Nelson claims that he is the only person on earth who has all of the keys and can act in the name of God. So he is supposed to be the most powerful man on the planet. So where is he? Why is he not doing anything in this conflict? Why does he only sit in his tax exempt fortified bunker on North Temple Street while the rest of the world tries to pick up the pieces? So that all I can take away from this is that either God doesn't care, God is impotent, he can't do anything about it, or President Nelson, he's too busy collecting his checks from Ensign Peak. Any last thoughts on this mess in the Middle East here, Gene?
Maybe there's some sort of scripture, I think, that's called "By their fruits ye shall know them."
Yeah, I'm not seeing a lot of fruit coming from North Temple. I saw a 2-paragraph statement and absolutely nothing else. Now, if you want to give us your thoughts, we release all of our episodes live on YouTube every Sunday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. Drop us a note in the chat. What are your thoughts on what should the church be doing in this incredible conflict? What should President Nelson's role be? Let us know in the comments, because I expect that someone who claims to be the most powerful man on the planet could or should do a lot more than what we're doing here. You know, Gene, transitioning to our next article here, Tim Ballard is once again back in the news here. Utah Governor Spencer Cox has now called for a criminal investigation into allegations against Tim Ballard, because, you know, he was investigated by the Davis Police Department and no charges were brought. But Governor Cox is saying, you know what, we don't want to let this one go. He's calling for another investigation. Wouldn't be surprised if we see criminal charges. I want to play this clip for you here, Gene, and get your thoughts on Tim Ballard being put into the hot seat once again.
All right, welcome back to 2 News at 6. Governor Cox is saying there should be a criminal investigation now into allegations against Tim Ballard.
But should the Attorney General's office conduct that investigation, given Sean Reyes' apparent friendship with Ballard? It was one of the questions that Brian Malahy put to the governor today. Brian.
Yeah, and there are multiple women that are now alleging sexual misconduct on behalf of Ballard involving a so-called couples ruse. Ballard, of course, the high-profile human trafficker. Today, the governor said, yes, it's important to note that Ballard is presumed innocent until proven otherwise, but he also says in this case, it's also important that justice is served.
For 12 years, I've been an undercover operator for Homeland Security.
Drips of allegations against Tim Ballard have now filled a bucket in the public record.
Should there be a criminal investigation?
I think yes. I mean, I think that prosecutors would have a duty to investigate.
Governor Cox notes a previous investigation into Operation Underground Railroad, the anti-trafficking group Ballard used to lead, resulted in no charges. Then the story broke of explicit accusations of sexual misconduct against Ballard himself. The governor says what's alleged appears to be criminal behavior. Ballard and Attorney General Sean Reyes were together on at least one Operation Underground Railroad mission and may be close, which leads to this question over any investigation.
You'd be comfortable with it being within the AG's office?
I would be comfortable just because I know those attorneys. I work with them all of the time, and they're incredible professionals.
The Attorney General's office reiterating today Davis County investigated, no charges. It also said, quote, unless someone comes forward with different information, that's where it stands. Either way, our office is conflicted out and can't touch it.
So, Gene, it looks like Tim Ballard could be reinvestigated for this new information that we have. We know that he's facing at least 2 lawsuits from the women who went with him on these supposed rescue missions, who have alleged that he has been involved in sexually deviant behavior, potentially criminal behavior. Now the governor is calling for a new investigation into Tim Ballard. What are your thoughts on Tim Ballard?
Well, I think that Tim Ballard is in a world of trouble. I also think that there could be some, other shoes dropping, finding out whether Attorney General Reyes maybe had a hand in having no criminal charges filed in the last investigation.
People are greatly calling into question, considering how cozy Tim Ballard is with Sean Reyes, who is the Attorney General of the state of Utah. People are greatly wondering, should Sean Reyes, who went on some of these OUR supposed rescue missions to rescue these supposed sexually trafficked children in these far-flung locations, should he be the one who's investigating this? Because it does seem to be quite a relationship, and maybe he should recuse himself. Maybe there should be a special prosecutor. What are your thoughts on that?
The people that would join in on some of the jumps, like at the Attorney General or other rich people, reminds me of the movie City Slickers, where they go to have a midlife crisis event in their life to make their life seem more interesting and meaningful. And it makes me wonder if Tim Ballard was sort of selling these events as a way for politicians and the rich to have, some sort of experience.
Yeah, it definitely does seem that way. And if the women are to be believed, and women are generally to be believed, to be believed in these type of situations, there was an incredible amount of coercive sexual activity from Tim Ballard and potentially criminal behavior associated with these jumps in these so-called couples ruse. Now that the governor is calling for an investigation, I hope that there will be an investigation into Tim Ballard. I don't think that whatever the information that was from the Davis County that was some time ago, there is new evidence that has been brought to light. And as you mentioned, Gene, there are probably going to be many more shoes that are going to drop in this horrific situation. Any last thoughts on what you see in the future for Tim Ballard and his potential criminality, his potential civil cases?
Hoping that the people that are close to him can start to see, what the real truth is, that maybe he's been hiding things from them.
Well, I think that Tim Ballard might be looking at working on rescue operations for himself behind bars soon, because all of these lawsuits, all of these investigations, not only into the fraudulent, potentially fraudulent donations to the OUR and also to the Spear Fund. We have the women who have come forward, quite a few of them alleging sexual improprieties, sexual harassment, sexual assault. We have a great deal of evidence that he was engaged in a fraud, that the children that he supposedly rescued, many of them, they didn't even exist on paper. I hope that we see a quick investigation, and I hope that justice is served in this particular case.
It's really just a he said, she said versus she said versus she said versus she said versus she said situation. We still don't know what the truth is.
Well, that's what we hope to see that justice will bring out. Okay, so I'd like to hopefully see all of this, have it stay in court with the evidence decided by a jury of his peers, not by the media, not by social media commentators or C-list podcasters like myself. Tim Ballard should have his day in court where he can face his accusers. You can find the Mormon News Roundup. You can find us on TikTok or on Instagram. Let us know your thoughts on that. We release clips from all of these episodes onto all of the social media platforms. We're also on Facebook. Let us know your thoughts about what you want to see going forward with Tim Ballard. Now, our next article here, this is a big one too here, Gene. We got a big week here. By unanimous vote, Southern Virginia University's Board of Trustees today appointed Bonnie H. Cordon as the university's 10th president. Now, Southern Virginia University, as you know, Gene, it is kind of a Mormon-affiliated university. It upholds the so-called BYU honor code. It teaches religious classes, and virtually all of the students are LDS. So it's kind of like a Mormon-affiliated university. Did I explain that right?
It's kind of like a BYUV.
Right, but not officially sanctioned by the church.
And unofficial.
And it's not funded by the church. But since there's no BYU out here, I'm near on the East Coast. I'm actually not that far away from SVU. But yes, it is a Mormon-affiliated university with about 1,000 students in it. And Bonnie Cordon has now been tapped to lead this organization as its 10th president. I found that the press release that goes along with this, I think, is very, very interesting. It talks about how Ms. Cordon's unique experience, along with her insight and understanding of the needs of today's rising generation, particularly qualify her for the role. And then it goes through her resume here, Gene. And I know that you looked at her resume. Who is Bonnie Cordon, and why was she tapped for this position, do you think?
So interestingly, I think when Bonnie Cordon was in the primary general presidency, most of the children that she oversaw are now a college age, so she might be able to connect with them.
Yeah, without question. She was also a member of the Young Women's General. She was the Young Women's General President. She's been a general officer of the church for 7 years, not a general authority, because women are not general authorities in the church. She was a general officer of the church for 7 years. What I also found very remarkable here is the fact that we have something in her background that a lot of people is very controversial. This pick is a lot more controversial than some people might think because of Ms. Cordon's relationship with her grandson and the situation that took place there a couple of years ago. Gene, what happened with Bonnie's grandson in Florida?
Yeah, in December of 2016, the family was on a trip to Disney World. They were there for the week, so they had been to a few days worth of visiting the parks. And apparently there was some sort of event that happened that led to maybe frustrations in the family, but it ended up with the death of Derek Cordon, Bonnie's grandson. And the police investigated, and they determined that it was homicide. But the only people around Derek were family, and there didn't seem to be any evidence pointing to any particular member. So as of yet, no one is facing any charges for the homicide of Derek Cordon.
Right. And it appears that Bonnie nor anyone else called 911 in a timely manner after Derek was found unconscious and hardly breathing. That's the entire controversy. Is it seemed like Bonnie and the others in her family did not do what a normal person would do when a child is found in an unconscious state, and that is to immediately call 911 and rush that child as fast as possible to the hospital. That did not happen. That is why the coroner's office, I believe is, or it might have been the prosecutor's office, decided to rule this as a homicide. And then the crazy part about this entire story with Bonnie is the fact that she then has turned this horrible tragedy into a faith-promoting story, which she has trotted out in a number of locations, including devotionals and in hospitals, like somehow her grandson's bizarre and potentially criminal death from allegedly negligence from family members. That is somehow a great way to build faith in the Lord. That's why she's such a controversial pick for Southern Virginia University.
And, I don't know if that was part of the vetting of her, but if she has a skill of covering up things, maybe Southern Virginia University needs that skill.
That is a horrible thing to contemplate, and I truly hope that that is not the case. You look in her biography that I pulled up here a little bit earlier, and it's amazing to see what she has accomplished. It is incredibly vague. It just talks about how she spent time as a general officer of the church, and she has a bachelor's degree. She was appointed to a mostly honorary position on the church education system board of education for a number of years, and that she was a mission leader in a Brazil mission. She served a mission when she was 21 years old. It's incredibly vague, her accomplishments. What you expect to see, at least what I do in a university president, would be to say that someone has published this many articles in peer-reviewed journals. They served as a director or a department head, or they were a provost for a vice president of a university or a college, or they were in private industry and they managed, thousands of employees and managed millions of dollars worth of budgets. There is no objective part of this resume whatsoever. It is 100% fluff, and it does not tell you anything about Bonnie Cordon's qualifications to lead a 1,000-person university.
Some people, hope for the best, and it is, a positive thing that a church, unofficial affiliated organization has picked a woman to lead. But there could be, some LDS women that have much higher qualifications that are just maybe unknown to the general population. That would have been a better pick, but who knows?
Absolutely. There's plenty of women, as we're going to cover in one of our last articles here. BYU conference is coming up, a women's conference, which showcases some of the amazing women who are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and have significant experience either in higher education or in the private sector. We're going to cover that later. That does not seem to apply to Bonnie Cordon. Of course, it's a private university. They can hire whoever they want. There's a lot of things on this podcast that I talk about that I probably don't know what I'm talking about. Okay. I'm just a seedless podcaster. What can I tell you? But I have spent a great deal of time in higher education. I taught at BYU Provo. I taught at the University of Utah. I taught at Salt Lake Community College. I taught at Utah Valley State College. I taught at Utah Valley University. I taught at Snow College. I taught at the University of Phoenix. I taught at Western Governors University. I taught at a lot of places. So I guess this is the one of the few areas that I actually maybe could be considered an expert in this field. And when you bring someone into this situation with little objective experience, how are you supposed to generate confidence in your provosts, in your academic vice presidents, in your department heads, in your deans, in the students? The students know who's qualified to be there. She has a bachelor's degree. She's only just barely ahead educationally of these students. Okay, how do you have credibility in this situation?
That's right, DBs. And it actually sounds like you're having a little bit of sour grapes. It sounds like you're upset that you were passed over for the job.
The truth hurts, Gene. The truth hurts. And you're hitting way too close to home, by the way. But seriously, no. So Bonnie, she was, as a general officer of the church, Gene, she would be in leadership positions of women's groups where she could do nothing without a man signing off, right?
That's right. It made me wonder if the board of Southern Virginia University is all men.
I don't know the answer to that. I have to do a little bit more research. But, like I said, from her biography, if you have a biography and you're an academic, then you say, you published this many books. You've been on this many boards of, you've been on the boards. You've done these many lectures. You
been
sat
involved in research projects.
You sat
right?
at the endowed chair at something. You have, I don't know, you've been on TV, whatever the case may be. None of that happens here. Or if you have a corporate biography, it shows all the thousands of people that you led, all the revenue increases that you had. You show real objective accomplishments. None of that applies here. And, it's just because the church is so opaque. She literally, from her entire 7 years at church headquarters, you cannot show one objective metric that she accomplished in 7 years. It would be different if they said, under President Cordon's leadership, retention of young women went up 15%, or we had a 20% increase in primary children getting baptized, or we had some objective measure that shows that she was a good general officer of the church. But because the church is so opaque with all of its information, we get nothing from her 7. What did she accomplish in 7 years? We don't know. This is supposed to be her professional, but this is what you did for 7 years. What did you accomplish? From her resume, absolutely nothing objective was done. She had a few prayers, won over a few hearts and minds, but not one objective metric. I have a serious problem with that.
Seems like she missed an opportunity of having LinkedIn help her compile her resume.
And Gene, we have a university president with nothing more than a bachelor's degree. Look, okay, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but I remember teaching at a particular community college in Utah. And I remember at the time, I had a terminal degree in education, and my department head, she had a bachelor's degree. Okay, department head. And I can tell you that she didn't have a great deal of respect. I'm not saying that someone with a bachelor's degree can't be smart. It's just a little bit hard to manage a department when the people that you're managing have better degrees than you did. In fact, she asked me to proofread her master's degree thesis, which I was happy to do. I'm not saying that you can't do it, but that was a department head at a community college, not the president of a university. You don't have any experience teaching. You have no classroom teaching experience whatsoever. You don't have any administration experience. You've never been a department head. You've never been a dean. You've never been a provost. You don't have the qualifications that are necessary to lead a major university. Like I said, President Cordon was served for 5 years as a member of the board of trustees for BYU, BYU Idaho, BYU Hawaii, and Ensign College. Let me tell you this. I'm going to go out on a limb here, Gene. That was an honorary position that basically did nothing because the trustees of BYU's at the top is the First Presidency. Those are the real trustees, and nothing that she said is going to go through without their approval.
So she's like a figurehead, like they said, somebody that can maybe help them raise money. And it makes you wonder, why did SVU pick Bonnie Cordon as its 10th president, I wonder?
I think you hit the nail directly on the head. She said literally in the article about what her focus is going to be. Her focus is going to be on continued fundraising with an emphasis on providing opportunities for more people to invest in the future of SVU and its students. So she's not there for her leadership acumen. She's not there for her educational knowledge. She's not there for her terminal degree. She's there for money.
That's right. She is probably well connected with Mormon money.
Yeah, so this would probably be a bad time to bring up my Patreon at this moment, I think, right?
We love Bonnie Cordon as the 10th president, though.
What's amusing also to me, BYU Provo, BYU Hawaii, BYU Idaho, Ensign College, all of those strangely require a priesthood person to lead the organization. Why is it but it's not an ordained office. It's not a calling. Why is it that all the BYUs and church affiliated or church sponsored schools require a man, but SVU says we don't need that? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, this is from a church that required the gardeners at BYU to have a temple recommend.
It's amazing what qualifications people need for certain things, isn't it? Gardeners need a temple recommend, but university presidents just need a bachelor's degree.
There you go. It's right in line.
Right. I'm just reviewing. This has really got my goat. As you can tell, you're probably right, Gene. I am feeling a little bit passed over here, especially since I live not far from this university. Let me just read a little bit more from her bio here. It says, in her assignment at the LDS Church's Missionary Executive Council, this is one of her accomplishments, Gene. Get ready for this. Be ready to be underwhelmed. Cordon announced the rule change granting female missionaries permission to wear pants as part of their dress standards.
There you go. Progressive.
That's your accomplishment? That women, this isn't like 2019, that women can wear pants? That's your accomplishment.
Well, you sometimes want to be humble. You don't want to list everything you've done.
I guess not. The other one, I guess that's better than nothing. This is one of her other accomplishments, which is one of the ones I actually have a huge problem with. She is personally responsible, or partially responsible, for the retirement of the names Beehive, My Maid, Laurel. The young women's monikers. She helped get rid of those. So now they don't have any monikers. They're just young women, whether you're 12 or whether you're 17. I like those names, Gene.
Well, they were, they had a nice place in our heart since they were around for 100 years and we memorized them. I remember it was kind of difficult to remember exactly whether somebody was a Beehive or My Maid or whatever. Yeah. But, pants for women this year, maybe priesthood in the future.
Well, that's quite a jump, In her resume also, they keep touting that she had a software company. But they won't say what the name of the software company is so that we could see what kind of a company was it. Was it run out of her basement that only had 2 part-time employees? Or was it a major juggernaut? I'd really like to know, but they only will say that it's a software company. They won't tell us the actual name of it. But I did come up with a Mormon News Roundup poll of the week here, Gene, because as you can tell, I've been thinking about this article quite a bit. Actually, can you read us the poll of the week here, Gene?
Why did SVU pick Bonnie Cordon as its 10th president?
That is a very interesting question. I would like to know the answer to that. Gene, I want you to be the first person to take our poll. And by the way, we release all of our episodes live on YouTube Sunday night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you come on over at that time, you can take that poll with us and put your votes into the live chat. So I want you to be, will you be the first one to take our poll here, Gene?
I will. Let me see what all the choices are.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. How about I came up with 10 choices for you. These are the 10 reasons that I think that she was probably picked. They could be right, they could be wrong. But let's go with how about number 1 here, Gene?
Bonnie's a killer selection.
I think we can agree that she is definitely a killer selection. I think that's a pretty safe bet, right?
That's right.
Yeah, definitely a killer selection without question. Or is it number 2? Bonnie
is super diverse.
Yeah, look at those pictures here. She is very diverse.
She hangs with the people.
As long as she has a flanked by church security, as long as there's a close by church security nearby, no problem. She's a woman of the people, right?
That's right. You only want to take so much risk.
Absolutely, definitely. How about number 3?
You can buy anything in this world with money.
You sure can. And if you're brought in for your fundraising acumen, you definitely can buy almost any, I think anything in this world with money. I've heard that someplace. I can't remember where. How about number 4?
Number 4 is the Spirit confirmed she's the right woman for the job. So obviously no background check is needed.
Isn't that the way I understand that the church runs, right, Gene?
That is definitely, that supersedes all.
How about number 5?
Number 5, holding a bachelor's degree for a PhD level job confirms Bonnie's Christ-like humility. In fact, what degree did Christ have?
Good point,
Debased.
Gene. Good point. You know, I'm being very arrogant about this entire thing. You know that? I need to be humble myself. You know, I need to be a lot I need to be more humble. How about number 6? This is kind of an obscure one here, Gene.
So are we not all not presidents?
Are we not all presidents? You remember that Sherry Do? Are we not all mothers? You know, are we not all presidents? And there's Sherry Do and Bonnie Cordon and some of the church's A-team senior female leadership there. Are we not all presidents? I think we are. I think I remember a general conference talk that went along those lines. How about number 7?
Definitely presidents in name only.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
7, nice to see a woman finally cash in on all the hard work the church has put in to pass the ERA. Uh-oh.
Well, actually, you know what? We better strike that one, because now that I'm thinking about it, the church actually didn't put any hard work to pass the ERA. In fact, quite the opposite. So I guess Bonnie's
they excommunicated Sonia Johnson, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's right.
Because of her support.
Yeah, that's right. But Bonnie's cashing in on it, so I guess that's good for her, but not for Sonia. Or how about number 8?
Kate Kelly wasn't available. She would have been qualified.
Yeah, on the other, that's the difference. Kate Kelly would be qualified. Yeah, that's the difference. Okay. Or how about number 9?
Wasn't there.
Apparently not.
It's 2023, and it's about time we put the Stepford wife bias behind us.
I, for one, say that it's long time to get rid of that Stepford wife bias. There's nothing wrong with being a Stepford wife, Gene. You're bigoted if you're against them. You're bigoted.
If you can bring me a mint julep on a hot summer afternoon, you deserve to be president of Southern Virginia University.
Or how about number 10?
To snuff out the vicious rumors connecting the church with SVU once and for all.
These two are not remotely connected together, right? It's not officially connected, and there's in no way they're connected, right?
Yeah, there maybe when the church eventually wants to distance themselves, they can pick me or someone else to be the president of SVU.
Yeah, but definitely not me. And that does bring us to our poll here. You got our poll in front of you here, Gene. Why did SVU pick Bonnie Cordon as the 10th president of SVU? You can cast your votes now in the live chat. And Gene, will you be the first person to select an answer to our poll?
I'm going to go with the ever important humility. Number 5, holding a bachelor's degree for a PhD level job confirms Bonnie's Christ-like humility.
I can't argue against that whatsoever. I couldn't agree with you more. I personally am going to go with number 1, because I really do think, Gene, that Bonnie is one heck of a killer selection for this position.
There you go.
Yeah, without question. So, don't take our polls too seriously, by the way. If you take our polls too seriously, you might be caught up on the way. Okay, transitioning. We got a couple last articles to get through here. We tried to get this done in just a little over an hour here. And we do have a bit of a sad one here. This is an unfortunate turn here. And that's a Kathleen Johnson Eyring, wife of President Henry B. Eyring, second counselor in the First Presidency, has passed away peacefully today, surrounded by her family in Bountiful, Utah. She was age 82. You can read all about her life in the bio. You know what they say, Gene, is that when couples, they get older, they kind of start looking like each other. Do you see that here?
Yeah, I'm sure that Henry was jealous of her hair.
I think that's safe to say. Now, I did notice something about this. This is on the Instagram. The church has an official presence on Instagram. You'll notice a couple of things here, especially this third picture of Kathleen, which I find very remarkable here. What do you notice about this third picture that they put of Kathleen?
So there's 2 things I notice. First of all, it looks like Henry had just gotten off the bull that he was riding and sat in the car. Yeah. Second of all, it seems to be obscuring the person that this article is about.
Yeah, this is why this is what I call the Spot Kathleen Challenge, Gene, because it's a hashtag that's going viral on TikTok, because you literally this is supposed to be commemorating her life, but you literally can't even see her in the picture. I mean, and also the look on you have a lot of pictures to choose from. Why are you picking a picture here that has Henry looking like he's having such a fun time? And then the caption is that his wife died. Is this really the picture that you want, where you can't even find the person you're talking about and the husband looks like he's having a fun time and just got up a rodeo at a bull?
I think if I were to put this out, maybe people would criticize it. Maybe I'd have to change it in a little while.
That's funny that you mentioned that, because we're going to get into that in a moment. So if you scroll through these Instagram pictures here, every single one of the pictures, Gene, have one thing in common, and that's that he's in every single one of them. Henry B. Eyring is in every single one of these pictures. They could not have one picture to commemorate her passing with her by herself. Why is that?
She could be pictured receiving a degree from BYU or whatever college she went to. She could have a picture of just her and some of her children together. But every single one seems to be a photo op for church leaders.
Yep. Instead of commemorating her life, we seem to be celebrating Henry because she's been buried in some of the photos. Now, the church went, I guess, the PR department, they fixed this when they released it onto TikTok, or the platform formerly known as TikTok. They got rid of the bad picture, which you couldn't even see her in. So I guess, is this fixed? Do you think this is fixed, Gene, because they got rid of the car picture?
I think it's fixed a little bit.
Yeah, it's fixed a little bit. But once again, we don't have any pictures of Kathleen on her own. Every single picture, she has to be associated with Henry Eyring. Her entire identity is wrapped up with her husband. There are no pictures of her by herself. Let me just show you one more. This was put out on the church's official newsroom here. Again, both of them together. Both of them, they're always together, and there's no pictures of her alone. I have a bit of a problem with that.
Because now they're calling mission presidents' wives mission leaders.
Yeah.
I wonder if the wives of apostles are pretty soon going to be called apostolic leaders.
That's very interesting. You really can see around corners, I have a feeling, Gene.
We shall see.
We shall. That's an interesting prediction. I do have a question for you. Who's going to be the lucky 50 to 60-year-old never married Molly Mormon who's going to be Eyring's new eternal companion? The search is on, I hear.
That's right. There hasn't been really a single, for very long, apostle. Whenever a wife has passed away, it's usually been within a year or so that they get remarried.
It does seem to be the case. There's a few exceptions to that. I believe that Elder Ballard's wife passed away, I want to say about 20 years ago. Elder Richard G. Scott, he was single for a long time. There are a few exceptions, but yes, that's generally the rule. Like we saw with President Nelson and we saw with President Oaks. They quickly get married to a younger gal who's never been married. This is the plate is set here for all three members of the First Presidency to be polygamists.
That's right. As we talked about earlier, Mormonism is about polygamy. And this is an example.
Yeah, I've never wanted to be a 55-year-old BYU spinstress more in my life. This would just be the great moment for that, because you got two folks who could be looking for you. You got Elder Holland and you got Elder Eyring scouring those BYU staff directories for those 50 to 60-year-old single gals.
You wouldn't even need a terminal degree.
Now, it's crazy, Gene, though. I looked this up. You can bet on anything in Las Vegas. And I looked up the odds makers for President Eyring on his getting married. The over-under for President Eyring in Las Vegas to find a new wife is currently at 15 months. Now, are you taking the over or are you taking the under on that bet?
I am going with the under. I have a $10,000 on 5 months or less.
Wow. That sounds like a Mitt Romney bet, by the way. Remember when he bet the $10,000 in the presidential debate?
There you go.
Yeah,
that's the solid Mormon bet.
Yes, that's a solid Mormon bet, without question. They're going to have a public viewing of Kathleen. Viewing will be on Friday, October 20th, with the funeral held on Saturday, October 21st. And I do wonder here, Gene, do you remember with Patricia Holland's death, how her casket was way off to the side, whereas the senior leaders of the church were directly behind the lectern? She was almost an afterthought at her own funeral. Do you think that they're going to learn their lesson and put Sister Eyring front and center, or do you think she'll kind of be off to the side, maybe in the back?
Let me think about that for a minute. I'm going to say they're not going to listen.
We will find out. You have a lot of prophecies that are going on this podcast. We will find out if they are correct.
I'm hoping the New York Times facts checks me after this episode.
Yeah, let's. We're gonna find out. I do have one last tweet that I saw that went along with this, which I found to be very interesting. This is from @LDS Mormon, and you helped bring this to me because unfortunately, I've been blocked from LDS Mormon. He won't let me see his tweets anymore, which really causes me a great deal of distress. I've lost a lot of sleep over it. But can you read what he said about the passing? This was just a few moments after the passing of Sister Eyring. Can you read what his tweet was about her life?
So sorry to see her go. We've been losing a lot of the lives lately, but death is an important part of the plan of salvation. It may be a darker, but it was her best day ever because she got to return to our Savior, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so what's your reaction to this summarization of Kathleen's life here, Gene?
It's hard to think that we try to live our lives, gaining experiences and doing things and thinking the best day ever is the day we die.
Yeah, I mean, think about this. Unfortunately, she had a long battle with dementia / Alzheimer's, meaning that's really in my opinion, one of the worst ways that you can go, because you probably at that point don't really know who you are. You don't know who the people are who are surrounding you. It's an incredibly sad, it's a really tragic way to go. But that is the best day when you don't know who you are. You don't know where you're going. You're probably very afraid of what's happening to you. That's your best day. Not the day that you gave birth to your children, not the day you got married, not the day that you did something great for another person where you lifted up the hands that hang down, strengthened the feeble knees, visited the homeless, clothed the naked, visited the hungry, fed the people who were hungry. Not any of those days, but the day that you die, that's your best day. And don't forget this of good report. He doesn't know Kathleen personally, but he's already said, no, that's her best day in her life. I know it because that's the day that she gets to see Jesus. What a mindset.
There you go. I can see why he blocked you.
I guess so. This is the other thing I thought about Kathleen. Unlike Sister Hinckley or even Sister Holland, I have never heard Kathleen Eyring speak once. Not at a women's session, not in a general conference, not at a stake conference, not anywhere. So she's like the perfect embodiment of Heavenly Mother then, right?
Exactly. That was the model they used when they were thinking about Heavenly Mother.
Yeah, I guess she modeled her life after it because at least I didn't get to know her. And by the way, my family does have significant connections to the Eyring family. By the way, President Eyring's brother and my father owned a boat together. So I do have actually a lot more connections to the Eyring family that I'm not going to bring up at this time. So I probably know the Eyring family better than Of Good Report does. So I find it amazing that people are just going to reach into someone's life and say, yeah, the day that you die, that's your best day ever. That seems like an incredibly bad take.
It seems like Mormons like to put women so high on a pedestal that we can't really see them anymore.
A couple last articles here to go through, and we're trying to get you all of the hot takes here. And we found this one here, Gene. This is absolutely incredible. Upcoming Hour devotional at LDS Church features Matt Osborne offering timely advice on, wait for it, situational awareness and grooming tactics. This is an email that went out to a ward in Texas. Gene, what the heck is going on here?
So it seems like Texas hasn't heard about the problems with OUR or Tim Ballard. Maybe they're having a difficult time tuning into the news from Utah. The other thing I thought of is, I didn't know very much about what grooming was or how to protect myself or others until the Tim Ballard story came across the airwaves.
Yeah, so this is supposedly Matt Osborne, the OUR president, who's been giving an official platform at a church here. And he's going to talk about internet safety, grooming tactics, extortion schemes, situational awareness, and conversation openers. This is extended to an invitation to all adults and youth. This seems like the wrong person to be giving a platform to, considering the fact that OUR has been at the center of all of these incredible scandals and lawsuits, specifically with regards to grooming tactics and situational awareness. Talk about the pot calling the kettle black.
I saw the picture with Tim Ballard and his tattoos, and those would be good conversation starters.
Maybe if you're on Grindr. For me, that's not the conversation starter that I want to have. A couple last articles here. We saw this. There's the. Have you been following what people have nicknamed the Mormon shrivel? Have you ever heard of that before, Gene?
So here in California, we have been modeling the Mormon shrivel for about 20 years. The ward I grew up in was the second ward, and we had a sister ward. We merged about 15 years ago, and now we have merged with another ward in our stake, and so my original ward is no longer available, and lots of stakes around have been combining, and so we've seen almost shriveling to oblivion. My brother predicts, and runs in the family prophecy, that pretty soon there's going to be a Northern California First Ward and a Southern California First Ward.
Well, I believe that the church is shrinking in California faster than any place in the entire world. I believe that that is the data.
Could be because, the conservative Mormons haven't liked some of the liberal politics in California, and they've moved to more conservative friendly states like Idaho and Utah.
Yeah, absolutely, without question. And that's what caught my eye here, especially considering you're in California. I saw this ward here, and I don't think I've ever seen anything like this before. Maybe just because I live out here on the East Coast and there's not that many Mormon chapels to begin with. But here we have in the Spring Valley, California. This was a ward in Spring Valley, California, and there's a picture of it before, and then you see a picture of it afterwards. It was sold by the church to the Catholic Church, and they just took the name of the church off of it. Now there's crosses on it, and now this is the Chaldean Catholic Church. It's just been repurposed to a different church. That stone cut out of the mountain without hands, it seems to have hit a pothole.
Yeah, and I was just thinking that maybe in a few years from now, there might be crosses on LDS churches and we wouldn't be able to tell them apart anymore.
Yeah, we definitely seen that on Google Maps, where the church is replacing the Moroni icons in Google Maps and in other locations and replacing them with crosses in perhaps an attempt to appear more mainstream and to be more Christian.
That's right. Nothing is more Christian than a cross.
Probably not. And also the Moroni's from the new temple constructions. 85% of the new temple constructions do not feature the angel Moroni on the top of them, whereas the vast majority of the older temples do figure that Moroni on there. So yeah, we're seeing definitely a transformation in church and the way that church is presenting itself. And we're also seeing a significant amount of Mormon shrivel as well, which is why I also saw this article, which came across my desk, which I find to be very interesting. This is in England here, Gene. This is from the standard.com. This was published just a couple of days ago. Mormon chapel to move into city as church-owned property fund looks to fill empty office space. So a Mormon church-owned property investment fund and registered charitable company called Covent Gardens IP said the change meant it didn't need to make any monetary donations in 2020. So what happened here is the church bought a large this is in central London, and this was given to me by Peter Bleakley, who runs the Mormon Civil War channel, which is a really, really good channel. It's like really binge watchable Mormon content. But for several years, the church was trying to secure a property in central London with a view of having it be a combination stake center, chapel, and maybe an institute. That's according to the rumors. But they kept failing to get the one that they were after, so they gave up, and instead they bought Alder Castle, which is a very expensive high office block, as a purely commercial investment for like 100 million pounds. Now, what this article says is that the report seems to be making the case that Alder Castle was bought at an overinflated price, much more than its actual value. And it has just lost Lloyd's. The church just lost Lloyd's as one of the tenants for that particular property. It's one of the biggest banks and insurance companies in the entire United Kingdom. So it would seem that they are losing the office space inside. So instead, they're moving a congregation into a commercial office space. And as the headline of the article points out, one of the reasons that it is perhaps doing this is so that the tax-exempt status will be transferred into the property, and you won't have to pay as many property taxes because you have a small congregation inside of your huge commercial venture. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, this seems like it's the UK version of There Goes the Neighborhood. Second of all, it was very interesting that they purchased it at an overinflated price, which makes me wonder if the prior owners maybe had their second anointing.
That's an interesting theory, one that I cannot corroborate, but certainly cannot deny. You know, what I predict also, you said you're going to think you might see crosses on Mormon churches in the future. What I predict is that because of the Mormon shrivel, the churches love to give up its commercial venture, its commercial interests, its real estate interests, because the church is the number one holder of real estate in the United States, and it does not like to give up those money generating assets. What you're going to see is, as the Mormon shrivel continues, you're going to see a lot of more meeting houses be placed into these commercial office spaces for two things. Number one, so you don't have to spend as much money on chapels. And number two, so that these particular properties don't have to pay the taxes that they would if they were a purely commercial venture. That is my prediction of what you're going to see in the future in California and other places. Any last thoughts on this one?
It'll be interesting to see, because I know the UK has some more open laws for religious organizations to be transparent, and so maybe we'll get some more info down the road from maybe Nemo or somebody else doing some investigation.
Yeah, there's a great deal more transparency that is required of churches and charities in the United Kingdom than there is in the United States. That's also true for Australia, the Netherlands, Canada. All of those places require great deal more transparency. So we're going to be able to hopefully see what kind of tax breaks the church gets for moving a small congregation into a giant commercial office space. Maybe that will lower the tax burden. I don't know. We'll be following it in this space. Our next article here is the Think Celestial. You remember from the last General Conference with President Nelson giving us all of that mantra? We're seeing that start to crop up here. Speaking of buildings here, Gene, people in their back porch, people are starting to put this Think Celestial directly onto their homes in huge letters. And that really reminds me, Gene, of like Warren Jeffs with the FLDS on his huge home as well. What you got to see on the side of his home was think, keep sweet, pray, and obey. We're seeing the same type of mantras. Keep sweet, pray, and obey is a lot like Think Celestial, in my opinion.
It's imperceptibly different.
There's not much of a difference between those two, except for, I guess, a perspective. Think keep sweet, pray, and obey, and Think Celestial, very similar. And you're seeing them on people's bumper stickers. You're seeing them on the outside of people's homes. You're seeing them everywhere. Every time that I wake up in the morning, that's the first thing that crosses my mind, Gene, is how can I think more celestial today?
Yeah, I have a friend in the UK who wants to think grammatical, because they say that think celestial is grammatically incorrect.
I guess technically it would be think celestially, since
That's
thinking
right.
is a verb and celestial is a noun. Or no, celestial is an adjective.
I think
right?
so.
Celestial is an adjective, whereas think is a verb. And so in order to modify a verb, you would need to have it be think celestially.
That's right.
Okay.
So that's our grammar lesson for the day.
I guess so. You're getting it from me, so it may not be 100% accurate.
Are you going to get a tattoo, Think Celestial, D-Base?
Oh, absolutely. I've already got a tattoo, and unfortunately, this is a G-rated podcast because I put it in the same location as Tim Ballard did, if you know what I mean.
There you go.
Yeah.
I do know what you mean. And that a lot of people might get the Think Celestial put there as well.
That's the thing, is they took out the prohibition against tattoos out of the strength of the youth. And as soon as they did, I rushed out to get those Think Celestial tattoos. And I'm pretty proud of them.
I'm looking forward to a video of Russell M. Nelson kicking his feet up on the desk, and on the soles of his shoes says Think Celestial.
I think that would be incredibly timely. That would be a very good idea. So the Church News, of course, which is owned by the church, is owned by Deseret Management Corporation. It released a Deseret News opinion piece, like an op-ed here. And the title of this has really gone viral. It says, opinion, Latter-day Saint women aren't oppressed. I know you read this article, Gene. What's your initial thoughts on this one?
So my initial thoughts was that the candidate going against Lincoln said the same thing about slavery. Slaves were not oppressed, and that ended up making him lose his bid.
Oh my gosh, that is a terrible parallel. It's crazy. the similarities are, we see similarities between slaveholders and the church. We see similarities between Warren Jeffs and the church. We're seeing a lot of bad parallels. I think the church got the message that this wasn't the right topic because they changed it shortly after they released it, Gene. They changed it from opinion, Latter-day Saint women aren't oppressed. They changed the title, and look what they changed it to. They changed it to Are Latter-day Saint Women Oppressed? Why do you think they changed the title name on that?
Maybe the church is trying to get members to start to think. That would be an improvement.
Yeah, it's a very interesting. And then this was not the only title change. They changed the title on this 3 times, because if you go to the title of it now, look at the new title, Gene. Can you read us what the new title is that they finally settled on?
Oh, I went to public school. That's too many words. But let me see. It says, the happiness of women can't be separated from the moral development of men. The church's organization reflects this. And I'm not sure how they can say that. The church's organization reflects that women are oppressed.
Yeah. Why do you think the church changed titles on this op-ed, not once, but 2 different times, and ended up on a really bizarre headline for a title?
It could be that somebody in the press room gets paid per word to come up with titles.
Or maybe there was that could be it. That could be it. I think that there was a lot of pushback on this particular title.
That could be as well.
Yeah, part of the article talks about, that women do not serve in certain capacities. Yeah, they don't serve in any capacity that has ultimate decision-making ability without the approval of a man, correct?
That is correct. In fact, I think capacity stems from a Latin word that means head.
Interesting. From the article also that we read here, this was the headline on the article. It says, Elder Alvin F. Merrill III is a General Authority 70 in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. His wife, Jennifer, says that he is fully engaged in home life, changing diapers, folding laundry, and doing the dishes. Men who internalize messages of love and service learn to make life better, she says. So this is part of the op-ed. Because Sister Meredith's husband changes some diapers and does some laundry and occasionally does the dishes, she's not oppressed. Wow, that's quite an argument.
Also from that, I realized that I am qualified to become a 70 because I changed some diapers.
I'll sustain you, Gene, without question.
There you go.
I also find that the title is very convoluted. When you say why Latter-day Saint women aren't oppressed, why not just put it in the positive vernacular? In other words, what's the opposite of being oppressed?
The opposite of being oppressed is being liberated.
Yeah, being liberated or being free. Why didn't the title of the article just state the obvious? It would say Latter-day Saint women are liberated. Why did they have to put it into a negative context of saying Latter-day Saint women aren't oppressed? What's the difference?
It's possible that it would harken back to the failed equal rights, where a bunch of women's libbers were trying to take over the world and the church was against it.
Right. Women's liberation, that is far too close to feminism. Those two are bosom friends, really. And we can't have anything in the church that even tangentially supports feminism, because as we know from Boyd K. Packer, feminism is one of the 3 great dangers of the church. So we can't say Latter-day Saint women are free or Latter-day Saint women are liberated. We have to say, well, they're not oppressed. That is hardly a vote of confidence, which is why the title of this was changed not once, but twice. And they seem to go through a great deal of statistics which show that Latter-day Saint women are super happy. They got great life outcomes. Their children do well. There's a lot of data. This is a really long article about how well women are doing. Does that seem to bode well for the claim that Latter-day Saint women aren't oppressed because their life outcomes are perhaps better than the U.S. norm in a number of metrics?
Mark Twain said, statistics don't lie, but liars use statistics.
Yes, I believe that the quote is there's statistics.
I messed it up for you.
I think I know what you're talking about. There's 3 types of liars. Liars, damn liars, and statistics. I think that is
that's one. I might be quoting somebody else.
Found this article to be rather remarkable, saying that, well, we have no decision-making ability in the entire church. Nothing that we do has the final approval. We can't do anything without the approval of a man, but we still think that we're really happy. Therefore, we're not oppressed. I find that argument to be wholly unsatisfying, but that's not the only women's issue that came up this week. And this is our final article here. I couldn't believe this when I read this, but what's the big article of the week? Is our featured news article, our final news article. Gene, what's going on at BYU?
Sports Illustrated Swimsuit Edition, I guess, is coming to BYU.
Yeah. Did I just hear that right? BYU is going to host a women's empowerment event with Sports Illustrated swimsuit models. Am I reading this right, Gene?
I think you are. That is a shock.
Yeah, Sports Illustrated swimsuit is one of the primary participants, with their models keynoting 2 of the panels. My goodness, I got 2 degrees from BYU. I taught at BYU for a very, very long time. In fact, I worked either full-time or part-time for the church for 24 years. That does not include going to BYU. I probably spent almost 30 years at BYU. Nothing like this ever took place in any of that time, Gene.
You never saw a co-ed walking around campus with a bikini on?
I'm afraid that I did not see anything, not even at the pool would you see something like that. Absolutely not.
Plus, if you were a good Mormon, you would aver your eyes if that ever should have happened.
Well, all I can tell you, Gene, is I sure hope that alumni are getting a discount on the tickets to this event, because that seems fair.
I think the decision tiebreaker went to the fact that the models promised to not sport beards.
Yeah, apparently bikinis and body paint is perfectly acceptable, but beards and sandals, that's a no-no. This is a far cry from what I remember my time at BYU, Gene.
The standards are just going down.
Well, I think that everyone who's involved with this entire conference should just wear Mormon burqas. I think that would solve all of the issues here.
It might. And I think that, tying it into the women's liberation, it made me think that women's liberation in the movement in the church is almost like calling the church the Mormon church. It might be a victory for Satan.
It very well could be. I do like the direction that I'm seeing out of new BYU president Shane Reese. If this is what we're getting from Shane Reese in his direction, I like what we're seeing here, Gene.
I do happen to be a man, and I do like Sports Illustrated, certain, issues.
But you're not going to tell us which issues in particular.
I usually read it for the articles.
Naturally, of course you do. Now, the Salt Lake Tribune covered this article here as well. That was first. It was first leaked, I guess, from the Times and Seasons blog, and then it was confirmed by the Salt Lake Tribune. This is the Sports Illustrated swimsuit models to share the stage with LDS Relief Society leaders. This is a women's empowerment event, and is part of BYU's homecoming activities here. This is what I learned from reading this. This is incredible, Gene. This is a women's only event. Can you believe that?
I cannot believe that. That sounds like discrimination.
I am absolutely outraged. This is wokeism at its worst. Banning men from the event. Greg from Quick Media, he should be all over this one, because Gene, I thought, aren't we all mothers? Right?
We are all mothers, and we all deserve to be able to attend.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, because if you look at the church's handbook, it was updated just, I believe it was 2 or 3 months ago, which approved calling folks by their preferred pronouns. So if I update my the Member Tools app with the preferred pronouns, do you think I can get in or no?
I think Ms. Dives suits you.
Well, all I can say is there's going to be a lot of fun stuff at this particular event here. This looks absolutely incredible because they are going to. This is sponsored by Maybelline, the incredible beauty product who's famous for all of those commercials with the glamorous looking individuals. It's sponsored by them, and they're going to have a makeup bar inside of the event. And it's going to have all of the church's senior leaders of the church, the Relief Society president. They're going to have all of these big time women leaders By the way, Bonnie Cordon not invited. Gee whiz, I wonder why. But they're going to have a makeup bar. That does sound like a lot of fun. I could use a couple of tips on that for sure.
There was an admonition by an apostle a couple decades ago that women should put on a little more lipstick for their husbands.
So you're saying that maybe Elder Ballard might be front and center on this one?
He could be on the committee.
He very well could be. Or actually, my suspicion here, and this is unconfirmed rumors, is that Elder Gong might headline this one, because we know from his general conference talk 2 general conferences ago how well he knows the swimsuit industry from being on those French beaches. He knows a modest swimsuit when he sees one. I think he's going to want to headline this one. And maybe even be the judge.
That's right. He's done the research. He is qualified for this position to be the judge.
But yeah, maybe so. No, literally just a few minutes ago before we aired this, Gene, I showed this article to my daughter, who is in college. Well, not at BYU, by the way. And she literally just sat there dumbfounded and didn't know what to say. It's like this article did not compute with her. This is a real contrast. Why in the world is the church linking together the Relief Society president with the Sports Illustrated swimsuit models and Maybelline, which is you could call it somewhat of a superficial company. We have an honor code at BYU. You can't even wear a tank top on campus. This is just really odd.
I think that Elder Ballard is going to put out a statement that he has no financial interest in Maybelline pretty soon.
I wouldn't be surprised to see that at all. This is the crazy thing also about this is think about how Spencer Kimball would react to this. He'd be rolling in his grave. And worse than that, Marky Peterson, he would be on fire with rage.
That's right. He would be a pulpit pounding opponent.
I certainly think that he would. Before we let you go here, Gene, what do you have planned for Latter Daily Digest in the near future?
We have some interesting podcasts coming up. Unpacking Mormonism, where a therapist has started a podcast to help people get through some of the trauma that they may have experienced as, various stages of Mormonism, and also other religious trauma. And so that is Sarah Westbrook's show. And we also have a fan that's going to come on the show, and she might be a future co-host with me as well. And her name is Summer Rain.
Well, I would like to thank our Patreons for supporting us in this podcast. If you come on over to Patreon, you can make a small donation to help this podcast. And I want to thank you so much, Gene, for ruminating with me on the great and spacious Beehive. I want to give a shout out to Weird Alma for this episode's music as well. And Gene, remember.
No unhallowed hand can stop this podcast from progressing.
So long.
When it comes to nicknames of the church, such as LDS Church, the Mormon Church, to remove the Lord's name from the Lord's church is a major victory for Satan.
Satan.